Marlene Jackson's son went missing 6 years ago. Police said her son ran away. No Amber Alert. No investigation. She searched alone, filed reports, called every station. They blamed her. They forgot him. But she never stopped waiting. Before we begin, thank you for listening to this story. If this story speaks to you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I read every single one. Now let's begin. Sunday afternoons in Atlanta always had a kind of quiet rhythm to them. After church, the neighborhood seemed to breathe in unison. Porch swings creaked softly. Gospel music played from open windows, and kids rode their bikes up and down the block until the sun dipped low behind the trees. It was a safe enough neighborhood, or at least that's what Marlene Jackson told herself when she let her 8-year-old son, Devin, walk 2 blocks to his friend Elijah's house for a sleepover. It wasn't the first time. Devin knew the route by heart. Right at the mailbox, past the corner store with the faded mural, then one more turn before Elijah's gate. He was wearing his red windbreaker and clutching his Spider-Man notebook like always. Be polite, say thank you, and don't forget your inhaler, Marlene had said as she knelt to zip up his jacket. Devin nodded fast, the way kids do when they're too excited to listen. She watched him until he rounded the corner. Then she stood in the doorway a few seconds longer because something in her stomach turned. Just a flutter. Just a mother's instinct. And then she went back inside. 45 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Elijah's mother. Is Devin running late? Marlene's heart stopped cold. She dropped the dish towel she was holding and checked the clock. 4:53 p.m. He should have arrived nearly half an hour ago. She tried calling his little prepaid phone. No answer. She called 2 neighbors. No one had seen him. She didn't hesitate. She called 911. By the time the first squad car rolled up, dusk was bleeding into the streetlights. Marlene ran out to meet the officers before they even got out of the car. My son is missing, she said breathlessly. It's been almost an hour. I told him. He was going right to his friend's house. He never showed up. The younger officer leaned back against the car door, arms folded. The older one scribbled something on a pad without looking up. Ma'am, the older one said, boys run off all the time, especially after church. Maybe he stopped somewhere. Marlene shook her head. He doesn't do that. He knows better. He's only 8. Maybe you want to see his father? The younger one asked. We haven't seen Devin's father in 5 years, she said, her voice shaking. They looked at each other. Well, maybe he got picked up and forgot to tell you. Happens. No, it doesn't happen. Not to my son. He's never late. And I told him, he always lets me know where he is. The older cop flipped his notebook closed. How many hours do you work, ma'am? What does that have to do with anything? Just trying to get a sense of the environment, he said, scanning her small apartment. Single mom, 2 kids, full-time job. Sometimes kids act out when there's instability. That was the moment Marlene knew. They weren't going to help her. I want an Amber Alert issued, she said. I want search dogs. I want you to check the corner store's camera. I want you to act like a child is missing. We don't issue an Amber Alert unless we have clear evidence of an abduction, the older one said calmly. This is likely a case of miscommunication. You'll probably get a call within the hour. They left 10 minutes later. No dogs. No door knocks. No urgency. Marlene stood frozen in her doorway, the porch light buzzing behind her as the squad car drove away. She could still see the officers talking in the car before they pulled off. One of them laughed. By midnight, Marlene had called every hospital in the city. She and her daughter, Tiana, drove up and down the neighborhood, calling Devin's name into alleyways and empty playgrounds. They printed out flyers from Tiana's school laptop, using Devin's 2nd grade photo, the one with the red polo and his shy smile. At sunrise, Marlene walked into the Atlanta Police Department with the flyers in hand. I need to speak to whoever's handling my son's case. The receptionist barely glanced up. Name, Devin Jackson, age 8, missing since yesterday. The woman typed something, clicked her tongue, then said, that's listed as a runaway file. It's already in the system. He didn't run away. I'm not the officer, ma'am. I need someone to act like my son is worth finding. The woman called for a detective. A black woman in plain clothes appeared a few minutes later, Detective Monroe. She looked tired. When Marlene handed her the flyer, she nodded slowly. We'll look into it. Marlene went home. That afternoon, a one-paragraph bulletin ran in the local paper. Local boy, Devin Jackson, age 8, reported missing Sunday evening. Police believe he may have left voluntarily. No foul play is suspected. There is no photo, no headline, just 41 words under the weather report. That night, Marlene lay in Devin's bed, clutching his Spider-Man notebook. Tiana sat at the edge of the mattress, scrolling on her phone. She had just launched a Facebook page, Find Devin Jackson. She tagged every news anchor, every missing children's nonprofit, every city official she could find. I don't understand, she whispered. He's just a kid. They didn't even call Channel 5. Marlene said nothing. She just closed her eyes and pressed her cheek into Devin's pillow, inhaling the last scent of her baby before it faded forever. 6 years passed. Devin's bedroom stayed the same. Same sheets, same toys, same corner where his Spider-Man action figure sat slouched on the shelf like it had been waiting for someone to pick it up again. Marlene dusted every Saturday, not because she believed he'd walk back in one day, but because she couldn't stomach letting dust settle on a room that still breathed of him. Every birthday, she baked the same chocolate cake he used to ask for. She posted on his missing page, still looking, still hoping. Sometimes she got 1 or 2 likes. Mostly silence. For a long time, the grief was loud. It rattled inside her like coins in a tin can. But after 6 years, it had gone quiet. Not gone, never gone. Just quieter. Like a dull ache in the cold. Like something sacred had frozen in place and refused to thaw. Tiana moved out and got her degree in social work. But she still came over every week. She never called first. She just showed up, sat at the kitchen table, and peeled carrots or folded laundry while Marlene pretended she had something to do. They didn't talk about Devin anymore. Not because they had forgotten. Because they hadn't. Every word about him still stung like the day he vanished. One Tuesday afternoon, Marlene was folding bed sheets and half watching the news. The anchor was mid-sentence. And tonight, the search intensifies for 10-year-old Eli Tanner, last seen leaving his Little League practice in Franklin, Tennessee. The screen changed to a photo, a blonde-haired boy in a baseball cap, grinning with 2 missing front teeth. His parents say he was last seen walking toward the parking lot after practice. When they arrived, he was gone. The next segment showed helicopters, bloodhounds, search grids mapped across the county. The mayor spoke. The FBI had already joined. Marlene stood there with the sheet half folded in her arms. Her eyes narrowed. Tiana arrived a few minutes later, walking in without knocking. She was humming something from the radio. "Did you see this?" Marlene asked, pointing at the screen. Tiana looked, then glanced down at the remote. Another one? 10 years old. Marlene said, arms folded now. He disappeared yesterday afternoon. Tiana frowned. Already got dogs? FBI too. Cameras. Press conference. They printed his shirts already. They both watched in silence for a few seconds. "You know what I got?" Marlene said, her voice a little too steady. "I got maybe he ran off. I got check the father's house. I got no Amber Alert, no helicopters, no one even walking this damn street." Tiana said nothing. She sat down slowly. There was nothing to say. Marlene turned off the TV. The silence stretched thick. "I don't want anything bad to happen to that baby," she said finally. "God knows I don't. I hope they find him safe, and soon. But they didn't even pretend to care about mine." Tiana nodded. Because Devin didn't have green eyes and a baseball bat. They didn't talk after that. But something shifted in Marlene's chest that night. Something old and aching, something bitter and sharp. She had swallowed her rage for 6 years, sacrificed it for peace, for faith, for sanity. But now it tasted rotten in her throat. The contrast was too much. By the next day, Eli Tanner was on every national news outlet. CNN, MSNBC, even the front page of Yahoo. His mother cried on camera. His father stood behind her, fists clenched. "He's a good boy," she sobbed. "He doesn't talk to strangers. He always tells us where he's going." Marlene stared at the screen like it owed her something. Like it owed her everything. By the end of the week, Eli's story was trending. Hashtags, TikToks. The governor announced a $100,000 reward. The Red Cross dropped off food and water for search volunteers. and Marlene couldn't sleep. She sat on Devin's bed that Friday night, rocking slightly. Tiana found her there at midnight, holding Devin's old light-up shoes in her lap. "Mama," she said gently, "you need to eat." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Marlene looked up. Her face was soft, but her eyes were on fire. "I didn't want them to find that boy and remind me what they never did for mine. I prayed so hard, Tiana. I begged. I begged them to look. I begged God. I did everything right. I know. They treated me like I'd lost a pair of keys. Like he wasn't a child. Like I didn't deserve their help. I know. They said he ran away. Devin never even liked go to the mailbox by himself." Tiana kneeled down and hugged her mother from the side. The shoes squeaked once in Marlene's lap. 2 days later, Eli's case took a sharp turn. A woman called the tip line and reported seeing a red pickup truck idling near the field the day Eli disappeared. So it looked out of place. She hadn't thought much of it until the story broke. Police traced the plates. The truck belonged to a man named Wendell Parker, living in rural Mississippi. The moment the news aired, Marlene felt her stomach twist again. Tiana turned to her. "You okay?" Marlene didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, "I think God's moving." Tiana looked confused. 6 years, Marlene whispered, "and I feel something shifting." Neither of them knew how right she was. Not yet. Not until that red truck would lead them to a trailer no one had ever looked in before. A trailer holding not just one lost boy, but two. And one of them had Marlene's eyes. Franklin, Tennessee was less than 4 hours from Atlanta, but to Marlene Jackson, it felt like another world entirely. For days, she watched the media cycle around 10-year-old Eli Tanner spin faster than a storm. There were press conferences every evening. The boy's pastor had gone on national television, asking for prayers. The governor offered his full support. The National Guard was rumored to be on standby. Marlene kept quiet, out loud at least. But in her spirit there was noise. Screaming, pounding noise. Her silence had become so practiced, so seamless, that no one would have guessed she sat on the edge of her seat each night, watching and waiting like her life depended on it. On the 6th day of Eli's disappearance, there was a development. A Franklin News anchor interrupted midday programming. The screen cut to a grainy, still image, security camera footage. A red pickup truck. The caption read, "Authorities identify person of interest." Marlene sat up straighter. The reporter's voice picked up urgency. "Police are asking for the public's help identifying this vehicle. Seen idling near the park the afternoon Eli Tanner disappeared. If you recognize this truck or know of its owner, call the tip line immediately." The footage looped. Again. Marlene leaned forward, her hands clasped. Her mouth moved, but made no sound. Her heart was beating fast, unreasonably fast, like it knew something her brain didn't. Later that night, Tiana came over with takeout. Marlene didn't eat. She just stared at the TV screen, where the same image played during the background of every news panel. "Red pickup," Tiana murmured. "How many of those you think are in Tennessee?" "Too many," Marlene said flatly. But her mind was racing. In the morning, she opened Devin's missing poster folder, the one she hadn't touched in months. She flipped through the old flyers, reports, police notes, scribbles, timelines, Facebook screenshots. In one of the community forum posts from 6 years ago, someone had mentioned seeing a truck parked near the church the day Devin disappeared. It was a throwaway tip, dismissed immediately. Nothing came of it. She stared at the page. Same color, same build, same window tint. No one followed up back then. No one cared. That evening, the police held a press conference. "We believe we have identified the vehicle. It's registered to a Wendell Parker, age 56, currently residing in rural Mississippi. Mr. Parker has a sealed juvenile record and is known to keep to himself. We are coordinating with law enforcement in his jurisdiction for surveillance and search." A photo of Wendell's driver's license flashed on the screen. He was white, balding, average, harmless looking. Marlene froze. Her mouth parted, but no sound came out. Tiana looked at her. "Mama," Marlene whispered, "that man was outside our church once." Tiana blinked. "You sure?" "I remember. I don't forget faces like that. He was outside the parking lot, weeks before Devin disappeared. I thought he was waiting on someone, but he never came in. Her hand shook. 2 days passed. Then 4. Wendell's property was placed under surveillance. Nothing happened. The trailer sat quiet. The red truck didn't move. Until it did. On the 9th day of Eli Tanner's disappearance, officers watched Wendell leave the trailer and drive into town to pick up groceries. He wasn't gone for long. When he returned, they moved in. A task force of local and federal agents surrounded the property. No sirens. No warning. No theatrics. The raid was clean, coordinated, fast. Inside the trailer, they found what they expected and what they didn't. In the front room, Eli Tanner, curled on the couch, blanket up to his chin, eyes wide, mouth dry, alive. In the back room, another boy, older, taller, silent. He was sitting on a twin mattress. His hands were folded in his lap. His eyes were open, but they didn't move when the officers entered. One officer asked his name. Andre, the boy said. Another asked, "What's your last name, son?" The boy didn't answer. He didn't know. They searched the trailer. There are no school records, no medical history, no photo albums, just 3 sets of clothes and a few old notebooks. A younger detective noticed the boy had a thin scar beneath his jawline. Familiar. He thought about an old case he'd seen on a database while cross-training. A long-shot memory. He asked for a fingerprint scan. The match took 3 hours. The result shattered everything. Devin Jackson, missing from Atlanta, Georgia, age 8 at time of abduction. Age 14 today. Back in Atlanta, Marlene was doing dishes when her phone rang. She saw the name on the caller ID and dropped the sponge. "Detective Monroe?" she asked, breath catching. There was a pause. "We found him, Miss Jackson." Everything slowed. She gripped the counter to keep from collapsing. Tiana was on the couch, scrolling her phone. She looked up and knew instantly. Marlene covered her mouth. "Where?" "Mississippi. He was found with the Tanner boy. You were right all along." Her knees buckled. Tiana ran to hold her mother up. It had been 6 years. And now he was breathing, walking alive. Marlene had spent so long wondering if she was chasing a ghost. So long questioning if faith was enough. And now, her baby was waiting in a safe house 2 states away. Alive. But different. Very different. She didn't know yet what they'd done to him. She didn't know what he remembered. She didn't know what he forgot. But she knew one thing. She was going to see her son again. The drive to Mississippi felt longer than it was. Marlene barely blinked the entire way. The world outside the windshield passed in streaks of gray and green, but none of it registered. Tiana sat beside her, quiet, eyes locked on the GPS as if afraid the road might shift. Every few minutes, she looked over at her mother, but Marlene never looked back. She just gripped the wool like it might fly out of her hands. They didn't play music. They didn't talk. It was the kind of silence that didn't need words, just breath and heartbreak. The safe house was tucked behind a community center in a quiet Mississippi town. A temporary holding space run by family services. Devin was there. That was all Detective Monroe had said on the phone. Devin is alive. He's safe. But it's not going to be easy. Marlene had nodded before hanging up, but her mind had already left. Already turned the corner of some other road. Already standing in a hallway, her hand resting on a doorknob she hadn't touched in 6 years. When they arrived, an older black woman in a navy cardigan met them at the door. "I'm Laverne," she said gently. "I'll be with you the whole time." "He's inside. Does he know we're here?" Marlene asked, her voice almost a whisper. Laverne shook her head. "No, we didn't want to overwhelm him. He's quiet, observant, but he's been through a lot. A whole lot." Tiana touched her mother's shoulder. "We're ready." They stepped inside. The walls were painted a soft cream. The air smelled like hand sanitizer and something warm, maybe chicken soup. It reminded Marlene of church kitchens and after-school programs. Safe places. Laverne led them to a small room with a window overlooking a garden. There was a couch, a bookshelf, and a boy sitting with his knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them. His head was bowed. He was wearing a gray hoodie and old jeans. Marlene stopped in the doorway. That was him. Older, yes. Taller. Thinner. His hair was different. His skin a shade paler from years indoors. But she knew. Her body knew. Her bones knew. She stepped inside, slow, like entering a holy space. The boy looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, the air collapsed. Marlene's mouth opened, then closed. She stepped forward. "Baby," she whispered. "It's me." The boy blinked. He tilted his head slightly. He didn't smile. Didn't cry. "Who are you?" he asked softly. Marlene froze. "I'm your mama." He shook his head. "No. My mama's name was Karen. She passed." Tiana inhaled sharply behind her. Marlene's knees buckled, but she stayed upright. "No," she said firmly. "I'm Marlene Jackson. You're Devin. Devin Elijah Jackson. You were born July 14th. You had a stuffed bear named Rocket. You hated peas, but loved cornbread. You used to fall asleep on my chest during storms." The boy's eyes narrowed. He shook his head again. "No, that's not right." Marlene stepped closer. She didn't reach out. She didn't want to scare him. "I never stopped looking for you," she whispered. 6 years. I prayed every day. I still make your birthday cake. I still keep your room the same." He looked down at his hands. Laverne motioned to Tiana, who stepped forward with a worn brown folder. Inside was a drawing, a rough crayon sketch of Spider-Man, complete with crooked webs and a lopsided mask. "You drew this," Tiana said. "You were obsessed with Spider-Man. You used to draw him on the back of church bulletins. You'd get mad if anyone folded them." The boy stared at the drawing. Then he whispered, I had something like that. A long time ago." "That's because it is yours," Tiana said gently. "You made it. I remember. Something red. A jacket. And singing. Like humming." Marlene stepped closer, slowly, carefully. "I used to hum a song while I braided your hair," she said. "You'd fall asleep before I even finished." His lips parted. I hear it sometimes. In dreams." Marlene couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down her face. "It's you," she said. "I know you don't remember me right now, but baby, it's still you." He looked at her for a long time, then said nothing. Laverne walked them out slowly. "He doesn't remember much from before age 9, she explained. "Parker told him you gave him up. Said you didn't want him. Kept him off the grid. No school. No social. Told him his name was Andre. His mind, it protected itself. It built a new life around what it was told." Marlene wiped her face with a trembling hand. "Can he recover?" "With time. Therapy. Safety. Love." Tiana held her mother's arm. "He didn't run, Mama. He was stolen." Marlene nodded. She already knew that. She had always known. But seeing him, hearing him deny her, it cut like a second abduction. A second loss layered over the first. Later that night, back in the guest motel they were assigned, Marlene sat on the bed with her hands folded. Tiana brought her tea. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. Marlene shook her head. Then, after a long silence, she said quietly, "He's alive. He's breathing. That's more than I had yesterday." Tiana nodded. "We'll bring him home," she said, "even if we have to remind him who he is piece by piece." And Marlene, staring at the wall, murmured, "I'll take a piece. I'll take whatever piece he's willing to give me." Because that was still her boy. And no matter what name he'd been told, no matter what he remembered or forgot, she would remember for him. Devin didn't speak for the first 2 days. He ate what they gave him. He nodded when spoken to. He kept his hands in his pockets and his eyes on the floor. But words? They stayed locked somewhere deep inside him, like a door that had been shut for too long and grown rusted at the hinges. Marlene didn't push him. She showed up every morning at the safe house, sitting on the couch across from him with her purse in her lap, her back straight, and her eyes warm but steady. She brought food, cornbread, peach slices, sweet potatoes, things he used to devour. He took one bite at a time, careful, polite, but without recognition, like he was trying to be good in front of a stranger. "You used to hum when you ate," she said softly once, placing the plate on the table between them. "You used to dance in your chair a little when something tasted good." He blinked, then looked down at the spoon. "I don't remember." She smiled gently. "That's all right. I remember for both of us." Devin flinched at sudden noises. He didn't like when people stood too close. He watched exits like someone expecting trouble. Tiana brought a new notebook one morning. She placed it on the cushion beside him. "You used to draw. All the time. Spider-Man. Race cars. One time you drew a whole comic about a talking robot with boxing gloves. You named him Fred." Devin didn't pick it up right away. But by that evening, a pencil lay on the page. A circle, a square, a rough sketch of a mask, tiny steps. Meanwhile, the story was spreading, but only halfway. The headlines still led with Eli Tanner. Kidnapped boy found alive in Mississippi trailer. There were photos of Eli with his dog. Eli's parents on the courthouse steps. Eli's baseball team wearing pins with his jersey number. Devin got one line. Second child discovered in unrelated missing persons case. That was it. No interviews. No backstory. No apology from the Atlanta Police Department. No renewed effort to explain why he was labeled a runaway in the first place. No one asked how a black child could go missing for 6 years and be found only because someone else mattered more. Marlene watched it unfold with a familiar ache. She'd lived it before. She'd screamed into the silence before. But now, she had a voice again, and she wasn't going to let it go unused. She requested a meeting with Detective Monroe at the safe house. I want every report reopened, she said. Every officer who ignored me named. I want a transcript of every call I made. I want the file unsealed. Monroe nodded, shame in her eyes. I'm doing what I can. I don't want what you can. I want what you should have done 6 years ago. Tiana stood beside her mother, hands clenched. He was 8, she said through gritted teeth. And y'all made it sound like he packed a bag and hitchhiked to another state. Monroe had no defense. Only silence. And silence wasn't enough anymore. That night, Devin had a nightmare. Laverne, the caseworker, called Marlene just after midnight. He's asking for you, she said. Marlene threw on her coat and drove across town in slippers. When she walked into the room, Devin was sitting up in bed, tears on his cheeks, breath shallow. I dreamed I was back in the trailer, he whispered. Marlene sat down slowly beside him. He said you left me, Devin murmured. He said you were tired of me crying, that I made too much noise, that you told him to take me. Marlene's jaw tightened. Her throat burned. I never stopped looking, she said. Not one single day. He lied to you because he had to make you believe nobody wanted you. That's how people like him stay in control. Devin looked at her, eyes wide. But I believed him. You were a child, she said. You believed what you had to, so you could survive. That's not your fault. That's his. Devin wiped his nose with his sleeve. I still don't remember a lot. You don't have to, she said, brushing his curls back. All I need is for you to remember who you are now, and I'll help with the rest. For the first time, Devin leaned his head against her shoulder. Lightly, like a bird unsure if the branch would hold. She didn't move, didn't breathe too loud. Just let him stay there, hand resting gently on his back. Across the state, Wendell Parker had been transferred to federal custody. The FBI was building its case. Eli's family had already begun a media tour. Interviews, GoFundMe, promises of legislation named in their son's honor. No one had called Marlene, but that didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time in 6 years, her son had reached for her. Not because someone told him to, not because a therapist arranged it, because something inside him had started to crack, had started to remember. That was her victory, and tomorrow, the world would have to answer for forgetting him. But tonight, he was just a boy sitting with his mother, breathing the same air under the same roof with a second chance written in his silence. And that, after all the noise and injustice, was enough for now. The trial was everything Marlene had expected, and nothing like she needed. The courtroom buzzed every morning with reporters, camera crews, and courthouse sketch artists trying to catch Eli Tanner's family arriving. His parents wore matching Navy suits, and when they cried, anchors leaned into the moment like it was gospel. Devin was there too, hidden in plain sight, seated quietly beside a court-appointed advocate, his posture rigid, his eyes distant. No cameras turned toward him. No reporters shoved microphones in Marlene's face. No one asked for her thoughts, her pain, or her truth. They were all here for Eli. Even in rescue, Devin was a footnote. The charges were stacked. Double abduction, unlawful imprisonment, child endangerment, psychological manipulation, and multiple counts of custodial interference across state lines. Wendell Parker sat in an orange jumpsuit at the defense table with sunken eyes and a blank expression. He never looked toward Marlene, never looked at Devin. He barely blinked. The prosecution focused on Eli, his fear, his trauma, his bravery. Marlene didn't begrudge them that. Eli deserved justice too. But as each day passed, the silence around Devin's story felt louder and more deliberate. During a break in the proceedings, a reporter cornered one of the assistant prosecutors. "What about the second boy?" she asked. The woman gave a diplomatic shrug. "We believe the second child, Devin Jackson, was likely a runaway. It's unclear how or when he joined Mr. Parker, but there's no record of an active search." Marlene heard it from across the hallway. Runaway. She hadn't come to court to testify. She'd been asked. Declined. She didn't need the cameras. She didn't need the world to clap for her. But that word made her stop in her tracks. 6 years of silence. And still, they chose to rewrite the truth. That evening, she called her lawyer. "I want to sue the Atlanta Police Department," she said. "I want every report, every log, every call I ever made. I want this city to explain why my son wasn't worth a search." The civil suit was filed within the month. It didn't get as much press. No court sketches. No viral hashtags. But when Marlene walked into that courtroom, holding a folder of old flyers, call logs, emails, and voicemail transcripts, she felt something shift. She read aloud the first call she made to 911. "I told him he was missing. They told me he probably went to see his father. I told him his father hadn't seen him in years. They told me boys wander off." She paused. "I told them I was scared. They told me not to overreact." The judge listened. The city attorneys offered a weak defense. Overworked officers, lack of evidence, systemic backlog. But none of it held. 2 weeks later, Marlene won. The city issued a formal apology. She received a settlement. Not enough to undo what had happened, but enough to do something with it. She used part of it to start a foundation. The Devin Jackson Initiative focused on raising awareness for missing Black children, lobbying for equitable response protocols, and offering small grants to families still searching. "I'm not trying to fix the whole system," she told the local paper. "I just want to make sure no other mother has to feel what I felt, that her baby didn't matter." And still, through all the noise, through the courtroom victories and quiet fury, Marlene's gaze never left one place. Her son. Devin was healing. Slowly. He still didn't like loud voices. Still startled when someone touched his shoulder unexpectedly. Still struggled to connect the life he'd lived with the life he'd been taken from. But there were signs. Subtle things. He started to sit closer to her during their weekly dinners. He asked her once if she remembered any books he liked as a kid. She brought him The Snowy Day the next morning. He read it cover to cover in one sitting. On his 15th birthday, Marlene cooked his favorite meal, baked mac and cheese, candied yams, and skillet cornbread. She didn't tell him what she was doing. Just let the smells fill the house like they used to. When he arrived, he stood at the doorway and just stared. "It smells right," he said. They ate together in silence. After dinner, she gave him one gift. It was wrapped in the same paper she'd saved from his last birthday as a free child. Inside was a framed photo. Him, as a baby, wrapped in a yellow blanket, sleeping on her chest. He stared at it for a long time. "That's me," he whispered. She nodded. "That's us." He looked again, then nodded too. "Okay." That night, as she washed dishes, she began to hum. Soft, thoughtless, muscle memory. Devin walked into the kitchen. He leaned against the wall. "You still hum that song," he said. She turned slowly. "You used to hum it when I was scared." She smiled through tears. "I never stopped." He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. He walked to the table, sat down, began sketching something on a blank sheet of paper. It was a small thing, but it was a beginning. To my viewers, this story is inspired by the real case of Shawn Hornbeck. In 2007, he was found alive, held captive for 4 years, only after police searched for another missing boy. He had been labeled a runaway. He was never given a headline until someone else went missing. This fictional retelling asks, what if the mother had never stopped fighting? What if she made them answer for forgetting him? Thanks for listening.